Hey everyone, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this focused revision explainer specifically put together for those of you tackling your GCSE religious studies exams. Today, we're going to map out the core beliefs and the wildly diverse denominations within Judaism. Our goal is to take a whole lot of complex theological history and break it down into a really visual, super easy to remember structure. That way, when you finally sit down for that exam, you're going to recall these concepts with absolute clarity. So think about this for a second. What unites a global community across thousands of years, yet somehow creates such incredibly diverse ways of living? This question right here is our starting point today. We're going to explore exactly how a single ancient foundation branched out into the vibrant, varied, and geographically spread Jewish community that we see in the modern world. Keep that thought in the back of your mind as we go through this. All right, here's our game plan for this explainer. 1. The core Jewish beliefs. 2. Orthodox versus Reform Judaism. 3. Understanding secular Judaism. 4. The diaspora, 2 communities. And 5. Diversity in Jewish practice. To make this super easy to remember, we're going to be using a roots and branches analogy today. So we'll start down at the foundational roots of the beliefs before zooming out to see how theology and geography created some very distinct branches of tradition. Okay, section 1, the core Jewish beliefs, the roots of the faith. Before we can even look at the differences, we really need to understand the baseline roots, things like the absolute belief in one God and the traditional rule that being Jewish is based on the mother's religion. And this brings us to a name you are absolutely going to want to highlight in your revision notes, Maimonides. He was this incredibly influential 12th century rabbi who painstakingly put together 13 principles of faith, pulling them directly from teachings found in the Torah. His work is a huge deal because it remains utterly central for many Orthodox Jews today. And honestly, it just provides an amazing baseline for understanding the core tenets across all the different denominations. Now, looking at our summary of his 13 principles here, don't panic. You don't need to memorize every single word. Just notice the big themes. God is one, eternal, has no physical body, and created everything. Moses is the ultimate prophet, and the Torah was given directly to him and literally cannot be changed. It also hits on the belief that God rewards good and punishes evil, that the Messiah will come, and that the dead will be resurrected. But, and here's the crucial nuance for your exam. While the belief in one God is accepted by all Jews, interpretations of the other stuff, like the exact nature of the Messiah, well, that can vary widely depending on the denomination. Which brings us nicely to section 2, Orthodox versus Reform Judaism, the theological branches. Moving up from those roots, let's see how differing views on the Torah branch off into the 2 primary theological denominations. I love thinking about this theological split as a rulebook versus guidebook analogy. On one side, we've got Orthodox Judaism. They view the Torah as a strict, unchanging rulebook that came directly from God. The laws, not up for debate, not open to modern interpretation. They just need to be followed closely. On the flip side, we have Reform Judaism. They look at the Torah a bit more like a timeless guidebook. For Reform Jews, the teachings are sacred for sure, but they should be harmonized with modern life. The laws aren't absolute, they depend on time, place, and personal conscience. So looking a bit closer at the Orthodox branch, and you'll want to remember this fact, they are actually the largest group of British Jews. We see a massive emphasis on tradition. Because they believe the Torah is from God and cannot be changed, the laws are absolute. But listen, this doesn't mean they just ignore the modern world, no way. Instead, things like scientific and technological advances are really carefully considered and navigated from inside the framework of traditional Jewish teaching. They don't change the teaching to fit the tech. They figure out how the tech fits the teaching. Now contrast that with the Reform approach. Here, it's heavily about reason and personal conscience. Reform Jews often focus mainly on the ethical laws of the Torah, how to treat people and live a good life. They tend to believe that many of the other ancient, super specific rules were relevant back in their historical time and place, but just aren't strictly applicable today. For them, the whole priority is harmonizing religion with modern life. All right, section 3, Understanding Secular Judaism, Cultural and Heritage Identity. Because actually, not all Jewish identity is strictly theological. This is a really important distinction. Secular Jews identify culturally, not religiously. They are born to Jewish parents, which gives them that rich heritage and cultural identity, but they don't believe in God. They don't view the Torah as sacred or divine, and they aren't practicing religious observances like keeping kosher or strictly observing the Sabbath. Their connection is all about ancestry, history, and culture. Moving on to section 4, the diaspora, 2 communities, the geographical branches. We're shifting gears here from theological differences to geographical ones. Okay, if there's one word you definitely need starred in your notes, it's this one: diaspora. It literally translates to dispersion or scattering. Historically, this refers to Jewish people leaving the land of Israel and moving out to establish settlements all across Africa, Asia, and Europe. And this physical scattering is an absolute game changer because it allowed entirely different regional cultures, climates, and languages to influence Jewish beliefs and customs all over the world. Let's use a family tree analogy for this. The foundational roots of the tree are identical, right? The belief in one God, the Torah. But as the diaspora forced communities into totally different environments, two distinct branches grew. On one side, we have Ashkenazi Jews, whose ancestors settled in places like France, Germany, and Eastern Europe. On the other branch, we have Sephardic Jews, whose ancestors settled in Spain, Portugal, North Africa, and the Middle East. Same exact roots, but because of the geography, they developed really distinct cultural traditions, different foods, and even different terms and melodies when they worship. Finally, Section 5, Diversity in Jewish Practice, the Impact of Geography in Britain. Let's look at how this plays out locally. It's highly relevant to point out that the vast majority of the modern British Jewish community actually traces its immediate heritage right back to that Ashkenazi branch. This is mostly because of historical waves of emigration, primarily descending from families who fled persecution and moved from Germany and Eastern Europe to Britain between the mid-1800s and the early 1900s. But wait, the Sephardic community holds incredibly deep historical roots here as well. In fact, Britain is currently home to 10 Sephardic synagogues. The oldest one is in London, and it was built all the way back in 1701. I mean, that's incredible. It beautifully proves that while Sephardic and Ashkenazi Jews share those basic foundational roots, they still actively maintain their very own unique historical practices side by side today. And that brings us to the end of our explainer. As you go back over these roots and branches, Orthodox versus Reform, secular identity, and the Ashkenazi and Sephardic traditions, leave yourself pondering this. How will this ancient faith continue to adapt while preserving its absolute core? Understanding how Judaism balances an unshakable foundation with such incredible cultural and theological diversity is really the secret to mastering this topic. Good luck with your revision, keep this roots and branches structure in mind, and you are going to do great. Catch you next time.